Hello, friends. So, what an interesting day. I'm really winging it on the words I'm going to say for this, so we're just going to let it fly and just know that whatever's coming out of my mouth is what I meant to say. But this is definitely a conversation that I've had many times with people behind closed doors, and I think I need to say something publicly about it. So you probably know that I work with a lot of men as a coach. Like, I've been the coach to a lot of men. I used to work in a male-dominated industry, and so I just relate with men really well. I always have since I was a young person, and I coach them. It works really well. And so what I know to be true about my experiences with male friends and male clients, hey, Emily, girl, what's up, is that typically I tend to be the only person that they talk to about the hard shit that's going on in their lives, like the really deep hard shit, right? Like the emotional issue, the emotional concern, any of those things. I hear often in the conversation, like, I can't talk to anyone else about this. Or what if I spoke to someone else? If I spoke to someone else about that, I'm not supposed to care. This morning in a conversation with a client, he said, now he's not suicidal, but he was like, and people wonder why the suicide rate is so much higher in men. And I thought, yeah, they do. And I think it's ridiculous. Like, how are we still not realizing why this happens? And so why that happens, and what a lot of people don't realize is that it's funny, because then if you look up the statistics, which I welcome you to do, if you look up the statistics, it is almost 2/3 more of the worldwide suicides are men, but more than 50% of clinical depression, people who are, diagnosed with depression, are women. And people are like, well, that doesn't make sense, because if more women are depressed, then how come the suicide rate is higher with men? And it's like, well, more women are discussing the fact that they feel depressed, because then they're diagnosed with depression. Do you understand? So that doesn't mean that that's really the truth, that men are experiencing that. They just don't talk about it. And why? Why is that? Because, and like I said, this is speaking to a very strong, very self-assured man who's like, yeah, well, because I'm supposed to just man up and deal with it. Like, I'm supposed to be like, if you talk about how you're having a hard time with something, everyone says you're a fucking pussy, and that you shouldn't think that, and that doesn't, whatever, dude, just fucking work harder. Just man up and work harder. Like, just man up and work harder. And I go, dude, in that moment while I'm listening to my client say, yeah, that's what we're told, right? Like, that's what happens. And people wonder why more men have, the rate is so much higher. And I'm like, dude, first of all, so incredibly grateful to be able to be someone that the men that I work with have, that they can speak to about the real shit that's going on in their lives. And the things that everyone else tells them makes them weak. But like, when you sit there and you think about it, men are told that it is their job to be like the leader of their household, to be the leader of their business, to be the leader of their team, to be the leader of da-da-da-da-da all day long. And now this creates other issues in other parts of the world, and that's not what we're talking about right now as far as where women stand and yada yada. That's not the point. The point is that when you tell a man it is his job to be the head of a household, the head of a family, the head of whatever, you are basically telling him that he can't fumble, he can't break. No one can see that happen, because he's responsible for all of these things, right? And so when you think about it and you look at the number of people, this is the depression rate, and you look at people who are, diagnosed with depression, it is extremely higher in women, because they're allowed to talk about it. They're allowed to tell their friends, their doctor, or their whoever, that they feel these types of feelings. And it's still taboo, and still they don't typically talk about it. It's still like this big hush hush, no one talk about their mental health. But with male, yeah, Emily, like, don't like to talk about their problems because it makes them look weak. Yeah, but who told them that it makes them look weak? You see what I'm saying? Like, I'm not saying that you agree with this by any means, Emily, but what happens is society says you talk about your problems, or you talk about your feelings, and you're weak, and you're a pussy, and you can't do this, and you better just man up and go deal with your shit. But then what happens when that guy goes home and he closes his door, or he gets in his truck and he's not in front of you anymore? He still has the same feelings and emotions. You running your mouth at him doesn't make them go away. If anything, it makes him hide it even deeper and hide it even more, right? But we say that everyone should talk about their emotions and everybody should look at mental health and yada yada, or you should man up, one or the other, but you support then everybody's actions don't match their words, and it supports them looking weak. And then someone actually does commit suicide or actually does leave, and everyone's like shocked. Well, what are we doing to prevent that? We're not, right? This may be hitting me even closer because recently, a man I know that was a very strong, very successful, accomplished man committed suicide, right? So there's just another example of how much we don't create a space to where there can be an acceptance of the fact that each person is a human being, male or not, right? Male or female, doesn't matter. Still human. You have feelings, and we have hard shit that we deal with as people, and we are allowed to have things be hard. Like, that's acceptable. Or it could also be it makes them feel weak. 100%. But again, all this other shit supports that, right? Like, God forbid you have feelings or you feel like shit about this, or you feel really down, or this is really bothering you. Like, all of that stuff creates such a ripple effect. And what nobody realizes is that ripple effect builds and builds and builds, and that's where it builds to these suicide rates. Because if you look up the statistics, we have, I actually pulled them up because I'm like, well, no, somebody's going to come at me with this shit. But it is a history, most men, a lot of the men who have this, have a history of mental abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse. They have chronic pain, terminal illness. They have PTSD. So then they self-medicate with alcohol and drugs and those types of things, right? Hookers, gambling, fast cars, adrenaline, trying to do something with this, right? And all of that becomes so big, they can't handle it anymore because they can't talk about the abuse. They can't talk about the mental abuse, emotional, sexual abuse, physical abuse they've had. They can't talk about the wife that completely ruined them because she did fuck them over and did unspeakable things. They can't talk about something that happened in high school or whatever. Like, they're not allowed to talk about it. It's insane. And so what's the point of me saying this other than just like being really upfront about the fact that, ladies, be a space that the men in your life can talk to. Like, for real, talk to you. Like, if you want to call a guy a pussy for having feelings, girl, you and I should have a conversation. You and I should have a conversation. Because that's all I'm going to say about that. Because nobody should be made to feel like there's something wrong with them because they have feelings. That's what we do. We have them for reasons. They come up for reasons. They exist for a reason. Just like you feel pain for a reason because something is not right. You know what I mean? Like, you feel physical pain in your arm. Something's not right there. Like, you need to figure out why that hurts. You know what I mean? So, men, if your buddy just went through a breakup or a divorce or his fucking kid died or, his family almost died or his business is struggling or what the fuck ever, don't be a douchebag and freaking close the door on that guy. Don't close the door on him and be like, man, you just need to work harder. Fuck you, if that's what you say to your friends. Take him fishing. Go for a drive. Doesn't mean you have to talk about his feelings, but that doesn't mean you gotta shut him down either. Doesn't mean you need to be his therapist or tell him what he needs to do with his life, but you certainly don't need to shut him down either. We have to be better. We have to be better. These rates only change if each individual person changes. That's where the change begins. Because we could create, the unfortunate part is I wish that we had more facilities and resources for people to use, especially veterans and people that have PTSD, to be able to use for going to get mental help for mental health, right? Even if we had, here's what I know to be true, even if we had all of the resources, people wouldn't fucking go. Because we've created this stigma here that it's not acceptable and it makes you weak and it makes you a pussy and it makes you this and it makes you that. People are like, oh, people don't say that to men. Well, then you've not hung around a lot of men, because yes, they do. Trust me, they do. Right? They can look happy on the surface, but suffering on the inside, yeah, a wife or significant other should be able to be a safe space, 100%. And unfortunately, it's not. In most cases, it's not. So my plea to everyone is to try to create that for a friend or your spouse or your brother or your dad or your husband, to try to create that for them. And friends, create that for your brother, your friend, the other men in your life. Like I said, that doesn't mean you have to like tell me all of your feelings, let's cry together. That's not what I mean. But you certainly don't need to shut him down. And if he's going through something or had something just happen to him that you know is probably rough, extend a hand, dude. Lend a shoulder. I don't know about where you live, but where I live, what men do here is they go fishing, or they go to each other's houses and stand in their fucking garages and work on a car or paint a fence or whatever it is, right? That's what we do here. When my buddies, like my male friends, have hard shit happen to them, I go sit at their house in their garage while they're working on a car, hand them tools, take it for a test drive. Like, that's what we do. It's just the act of being there, right? I don't ask them to tell me their feelings unless they want to, but they also know they're not alone. So, and of course, always you can find a therapist or a coach or somebody that you can speak to that no one even needs to know exists. You know, and if you don't want to tell them, you don't have to. And that's part of the problem though, right? Like, it should become something that it's a perk, something that makes a man look stronger and better and more well-rounded. And you should see as like a freaking gold check star or gold star spot if he has somebody that he invests in as his confidant, as his support, right? Like, I always think that's really huge of my male clients specifically, that they speak of our relationship and what I do with them in their businesses and in their lives very highly, and they should feel really proud of making those choices, if you ask me. I think anyone should, but I'm just saying, like, those things are important. And I believe that just like everything, talking about this stuff helps. And what we do as individuals is the only way that anything will ever change. So do with this what you will. If you could like it, if you could comment, if you could share it, that would be huge for me. And for everyone who might not know this stuff and might be able to gain some knowledge or perspective shift or some comfort from hearing this. That's how change happens. So thank you guys for watching and for being here. And you're not alone ever. But I know how hard it is to reach out. So I hope, if anything, this, brings a little comfort. So thank you guys. See you later.